All right, hey everybody. We're going to talk about the first New Deal. And remember, this is Franklin Delano Roosevelt's plan to get America back on its feet. The New Deal will be a slow process to helping towards recovery. It's not an overnight success, but it's definitely not a failure. So it will help, just helps slowly. The essential questions are: what are the three R's of the first New Deal? And what did the Glass-Steagall Banking Act form? That's very important today and will be familiar to you, I think, when I teach it. I also wanted you to hear FDR's words at the Democratic National Convention, where he is talking about the first New Deal. This is the second time he will bring that term up. First New Deal or New Deal, and I thought it'd be cool for you to hear it from him himself. So listen to this.
I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people.
So he's saying, I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people. And that new deal is what we're really studying here. He really goes out on a limb and does great things with this New Deal plan. And he puts himself out there. You know, it's his plan, and he's just saying we at least need to try something. So the first New Deal details the three R's are relief for people out of work. So that one's going to be focused on the men who have no job, to try to get them a job. Relief, get them relief so now they can pay their bills and things. Recovery. Recovery is going to focus on businesses recovering themselves, you know, that they've gone bankrupt or whatever, building back up again, but also recovering our economy as a whole, all the businesses put together being obviously more successful than they were. And then reform. And I think of reform as primarily banking reform or stock market reform. We're trying to fix these economic institutions like the bank or stock market so that there are kind of like there's a net in place to catch any problems that come out, so that we don't have any sort of future disaster like this Great Depression. Okay, so first I need to teach you the Glass-Steagall Banking Act. The first thing it's going to do is separate commercial and investment banking. Commercial banking would be like BB&T. Okay, that's a commercial bank. They're in the business to make money. Investment banking would be like Fidelity, which is not called Fidelity anymore. Community One has a wealth management section. And they're involved in people who are wealthy, are going to try to invest their money, stocks and bonds, things like that, anything that the bank can provide. So it will separate the two types of banks. But also, the most important thing is it sets up the FDIC, Federal Deposit, because if you put your money in the bank, that's a deposit, right? Insurance. So it's insurance on the money you put in the bank corporation. So it provides government insurance for bank deposits. I wonder if you have ever seen this by chance. Probably when you have walked into a bank, normally there's like a clear sticker that's on the door, and it will say FDIC in some kind of darker print. That's saying that bank is FDIC approved, which means that they will have insurance on the money that's in the bank up to a certain amount. Here's another one, another FDIC, which I think is funny, which is Bart Simpson saying, I am not an FDIC insured bank. So obviously he had been collecting people's money for safekeeping, and then he was spending it. So, you know, he wasn't holding their money and giving them a return on their investment. So FDIC is insurance for your money. Now, why would they want this? Remember, after the banks failed and things got so bad with banks literally closing the door on people as they were trying to get their savings out, folks just do not trust banks anymore. And I may have told you the story in class about my grandfather, but when he passed away, he grew up during the Depression, and he passed away 18 years ago. And when we went through the home and got his clothing, we were cleaning out the house because we were going to sell it, we found all kinds of money, and he was not wealthy, but all kinds of money stashed everywhere in that house, under the mattresses, in closets, because he did not trust banks, because he remembered his parents losing all their money in the bank. So FDIC, we're trying here to help people understand that now with FDIC, the bank will make sure you get your money back because they are insured. Normally it's somewhere around $250,000. They will insure your money up to. Okay, so if you've got more money than that, then you're probably going to spread your money out into several banks. SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. They regulate the stock market. They're going to limit speculation so that problems that we were having with folks speculating that the stock will go up and they might put in half the amount, promising to pay it, their full amount when the stock increases, and instead the stock just drops. So you're having people invest in the market on promises and not really money. So the SEC is around today, even today, to regulate the stock market. And here is a picture of their logo, Securities and Exchange Commission. And you see this all over Wall Street near where our stock market exchange is. Okay, PWA is next, Public Works Administration. They're going to build roads, and they're going to build bridges, dams, and provide jobs to men. So I brought some road here. Some road. Here's a bridge. We have all kinds of things in our house. So Lego man Emmett here, if you can see, he's a little frightened because he has no job during the Great Depression. When they get these bridges and roads, those jobs started, then they're going to hire the Emmets of the world, and Emmett is going to be now much happier that he can work, on this bridge, build this bridge as part of the New Deal. So his family will now get fed because he has a job. So that's what it says here, provided jobs to people. So PWA, Public Works. And this is a really cool poster to show you how massive this is. The Hoover Dam is also going to be built through the Public Works Administration. Just tons and tons of different roads and bridges and just construction jobs, basically, with my Emmett man construction worker that will be built, because now there are jobs out there to be had. So PWA does a lot of that. Also, the Civil Works hires workers for temporary construction jobs. This picture shows you highway construction, which also the Emmets of the world would be doing, highway construction. So they're doing temporary, just build the interstate, build the highway, and that gave them a job at least for a little while. I shouldn't have said interstate because we don't have that yet, but just roads, basic roads, or a Civil Works Administration. And then you have Tennessee Valley Authority. The area of the Tennessee Valley was very, very poor, and people didn't even have electricity at this point. So we're going to start building power plants there that can provide electricity, also to control flooding, because there's a lot of flooding issues in the valley, Tennessee Valley. And here is a picture of that, building dams to control the flooding around this Tennessee Valley area. Okay, so TVA is Tennessee Valley. Before I go on, just remember FDIC, government insurance for the bank, Federal Deposit Insurance. SEC, Securities and Exchange, focuses on the stock market, making sure we don't have speculation anymore. PWA and CWA are very similar. PWA focuses on building roads and bridges and dams. CWA hires workers for those temporary jobs like constructing highways. TVA, Tennessee Valley, is going to focus on building power plants and getting electricity in Tennessee, as well as building dams. You could also use the hydroelectricity from the dam, so it powered the electricity is what I'm trying to say. All right, next one is CCC, which is Civilian Conservation Corps, and I brought some ways you can remember that. Employ young men in forestry jobs. So we have some trees, although these are palms. So here's some trees, and we're going to hire some guys to come in and cut down. See, it's going to fall. Cut down the trees and provide the lumber and things like that to area lumber companies so that they can then employ people to work at a lumber mill. So this is very important. Also, in addition to cutting down trees, the foresters are also going to replant or plant, in its place. Lots and lots of young men. So we're targeting here like 17, 18-year-old young men in the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, working in these forestry jobs. I think this is a great picture to show you because these guys will be about your age. And here they are with all the lumber in the background. They've cut down all these trees. This guy's got looks like an axe. It's very primitive tools, but it gets the job done. And most importantly, these young men, instead of just sitting home, are now making money, and they're providing that back to their parents. So there's a lot of young men in those jobs. The AAA, Agriculture Adjustment Act, is going to do something kind of strange. So just remember, AAA, Agriculture Adjustment. So it says prices for farm goods were too low because farmers have been growing too much food in the 20s. So the government pays farmers not to grow certain things and not to have but certain number of livestock. And that way supply and demand would get closer together. If supply is way too big, and you don't have that demand for certain items, then those things don't get used, okay? And then you think, well, you don't need those farmers. So what they're trying to do is readjust supply and demand, okay? For example, tobacco. So I'm not really necessarily talking about things you would eat, but tobacco is not very useful to folks during the Great Depression because they cannot afford cigarettes, and it's not something you can eat anyway. So there might be a high supply of tobacco. So the farmers would actually be paid not to grow it. And think that we want to keep farmers in business, right? So you're going to pay them just so they can make a living for a few years, even if the supply is too high. And here is an AAA poster, which is pretty cool. America has plenty of food. See, the thinking was now, for everyone, we need to make sure that there's not too much, okay, out there, and not necessarily food, but tobacco and things we don't need to have. Okay, and then last is the NRA, National Recovery Administration. It is not Rifle Association, okay, so don't confuse it. Recovery. And it allowed businesses and the government to set rules on manufacturing. And I have one of those posters as well, which is pretty cool. America's Answer Production, getting men back into the factory again, like we did in World War I, and get them back working once more. So NRA allows businesses to set rules on manufacturing and make sure we've got plenty of men in those factories working. Okay, now you need to write a summary to that, and I'm going to go back to the essential questions. What are the 3 R's of the first New Deal? Relief, remember that's for the individual men who need a job. Recovery, for businesses that have gone bankrupt, for the economy that's a mess. So if anything attached to a business would be recovery. And reform is to help, the American economy.